Alright, welcome back to probably the last or second last tutorial for our 1945, and what we're going to be doing is adding some life to our plane so that when we get hit by the enemy we lose a certain amount of health, and then once we get hit say 3 times then we actually die, and we can also learn to put lives in as well. So let's get to it. Now what we need to do is we need to create a new object, and this new object is going to have no sprite. So we've done this before and it's going to have no object, but we're going to call it controller underscore life. Now control life, we're going to click into the room as a question mark, but it's going to teach us and tell us a whole bunch of stuff about our plane, and we're going to set actions for it so that it can control our health. So the first event I want you to do is a create event. Now we need to set the score to 0, so go to the score tab, drag that across just so it starts with a new score of 0. We also we can click OK on that, and we need to set the lives. We haven't done lives yet, and you might need to look back to this when you're making your actual game on how to do lives, because it can be quite confusing. But what we need to do is set the number of lives. So just say we want 3 lives. So we're going to have 3 lives in this game. Click OK, and as well as having lives, it's also important to have health. So we click on set the health, we drag that across, and we set it to 100. Click OK. The next thing is this one here. Now it's the window caption info, and as you can see there's a bunch of different options there. Now what these options do is that they can display at the top of our game, so when we're actually playing our game, and it can write these words for us. So it can have the word score, it can have the words lives, and it can have the word health. Now, we obviously are going to create our own little scoreboard, so we don't want these words up the top. So where it says show score, we're going to change this to don't show. Now we want to have all 3 of these on don't show. So far we've had show score on show, and up in the top left corner when we're playing our game it says score and adds it up 5, 10, 15, 20 and so on. But we're going to set it to don't show because in a minute we're going to set it so that we have our own little score tab. So I want you to do that and click OK. The next thing we're going to do is we need to change what happens when our plane collides with our enemy plane, because this is what we had it in our last tutorial on what your game looks like now, in that if it collides, remember we turn it into explosion 2 and pretty much our game ends and the high score table shows up. We don't want that to happen anymore. Now what we want to do is turn it into explosion 1, so it seems like a little explosion, and only explosion 2 happens when your plane gets completely destroyed. So if the little plane, the enemy, collides with yours for the first couple of times, only a small explosion occurs. So what we need to do is just delete some of these, so you can just click delete on your keyboard, and we need to add some new ones in. We need to play a sound of explosion 1. So remember we're changing it back to explosion 1. Keep the loop on false. We also need to create an instance of object explosion 1. Not the second one, we're putting it back to the first one. And we're also got to set it to relative, so wherever the plane and our plane collide, that's where the explosion occurs. The next thing we want to do is jump to a given position, and we want to set it at random, room width, and -16, and it applies to the self. So we're saying that we want the enemy, obviously when it collides, to reappear at the top of the screen. So click OK. Now the last thing we need to do, which we haven't done before, is we need to go to score and we need to set the health, but we're going to set it to -30, and we're going to set it relative to -30. What that's saying is every time our plane gets hit, we want to take 30 points off its health, so 30% of its health away, and so click OK. Now I want you to open back up your controller life. So we open that back up, and we've got our create event. We can close this one behind it, save changes. and we've got our create event, but we need to put 3 other events in here. The first one, the next two both come under the other event, and I want you to click on no more lives. Now, when no more lives happen, there are two little steps that we want to put in. Just like before, when there's no more lives, we want to show the high score table. Click OK. You can play with those other things later. And we also want to restart the game. So, main 2 tab, restart the game. And click onto adding a new event under the other of no more health. So we specified what happens at the start, so sets the score, gives us some lives, gives us some health. At the end of our lives, we show the high score and table and restart the game. But what happens when there's no health left? Well, we need to write in a few actions for it. The 3 actions we're going to be doing is setting the health to 100, playing the sound of the explosion, and changing the instance into the second explosion. We've done this before, but in a previous tutorial. So we go to health underscore, and we're setting the health to 100. So all we're saying, not 1,000, 100, is that we're actually resetting the health. So it starts us with a new life, new health of 100. So when we crash into the enemy plane, we only lose 30% of our health again. We then need to go into main 1 and drag your sound across, and we want to play sound explosion 2, not have it on a loop, and as well as that we want to use this command we used previously and change it into explosion number 2. So that's what happens. The big explosion happens after we get hit 3 times, so it's almost like a final explosion where our plane gets destroyed, and it's slightly bigger than the other explosion. Now, what we need to do after this is check that in our explosion 2 that all the properties are right. So we can click OK here, open up Object Explosion 2. Now we need to slightly change some of these properties because we don't need the high score table because we've already put that in elsewhere at the end of no more lives, and we don't need to restart the game because we've also put that in elsewhere. But what we need to do is we need to keep destroy the instance and the sleep, but the sleep occurs after a big explosion, so before the next life. Then we need to, in our main one, is create an instance of our plane again. So what we're saying is the explosion number 2, this explosion occurs when we've got no more health left. And then we obviously want to create our plane again. And we usually create our plane just where it disappeared the last time. So we don't put X and Y as a value, we just tick relative, and that means wherever the plane disappeared or got destroyed, that's where the new plane is going to be created. And the last thing we need to do for this Object Explosion 2 is we need to set the lives relative to -1. So we grab our lives, set lives, and we write new lives -1, but we need to make sure we tick the relative box. What that means is it takes 1 off our lives. So if we had 3 lives, this explosion occurs, we then only have 2 lives. We click OK. Now what I need you to do is to go into control life, and one thing that I forgot to do just before was that when we have no more health and we change the instance into Object Explosion, we can't apply it to the self because there's no sprite. We actually need to change the My Plane into Explosion 2. So just press OK. We now just also need to check that in our object properties of our Object Explosion 2, make sure if yours is on no sprite that you set it to Sprite Explosion 2 so that the proper explosion happens. And then you can save your changes. Now the last thing you need to do is open up your room. And once you've opened up your room, we need to click and find that invisible object, so one that doesn't have a sprite, control a life, and we need to click it as a question mark in the room. As you can see down here, it says that object control life is now into play. So I want you to click the green tick and play the game. And hopefully your game should look something like this, and that when we explode, with the smaller plane, so you'll see a small explosion 3 times because we have 3 lots of health, and then a big explosion. Once that big explosion happens, you can see that we now have a new plane and that we get 3 lives. So you can have a go at that. As you can see, up in the top left here, the score no longer shows for us because we've set it not to show. This is the end of this tutorial, but in the next tutorial I'm going to show you how to set the scoreboard down the bottom. So close the game, save your work, and move on to the next tutorial.